Thank you. Hey, friends. Welcome to this virtual coffee lunch and learn on September 23rd of 2022. Yesterday, I had to ask somebody if it was 2021 or 2022, but I remembered today. So here we are, and we are talking all things open source to get us ready for Hacktoberfest. So we're really excited. Please feel free to ask questions throughout at any time. You can put them in the chat. You can use the hand raise function. We're happy to answer your questions. We're going to be talking, evaluating repositories, looking at PRs, issues, that kind of thing. But before we get started, just a little bit about us. If you're watching this video on YouTube, Virtual Coffee has been around since April of 2020, and our mission is to be a welcoming tech community that allows room for growth and mentorship at all levels, and to create meaningful opportunities for learning, leadership, contribution for everyone. You can always find out more about us at virtualcoffee.io. And so today, I'm Bekah. I'm one of the maintainers at Virtual Coffee, and Kirk and Dan, also maintainers at Virtual Coffee, are going to be also sharing. I am going to get us started, if that's okay, with a screen share. But where is screen share? It's a big green button, and I always miss it. Okay. No, I don't know where everybody went. Okay, there's everybody. So I am just gonna talk you through evaluating repositories, and we're gonna start with this September monthly challenge. So we're in September right now. We've got about a week left, a little less than a week left to evaluate repositories for this monthly challenge. But I think it's good, even going into Hacktoberfest, to be able to look at the different repositories, see if they're good for contributing to, if it's a good place to start. We had a lunch and learn last week or the week before, and you can check out that video on our YouTube channel with Brian Douglas of Open Sauce that talks a little bit more about open source things. But for right now, I just wanted to walk you through what our challenge looks like to help to just get a general sense of how you can evaluate a repository. So we have this nice checklist here that I'll show you in a minute. But let's see here. We have it linked a couple of times. I would say if there's two ways, there's two people that can anybody can evaluate a repository. It's not just two people. But as a contributor, the way that you're looking at the repository might be a little bit different, because you are looking at, is this a good and positive place for me to contribute to? If you're a maintainer, you're thinking about, how can I make my repository good for a contributor to participate in? And so I think that is important to recognize that there's two perspectives that might be coming in here. You always ask for help. We have an open source channel as well as a Hacktoberfest channel in our Slack, so you can turn there. But we're using this repository checklist to help us go through and look at different repositories. So it should have a relevant name, should have a description, relevant topics, a README file, contributions or contributing file, a valid open source license, a code of conduct, and issue and pull request templates. So if you are participating in this month's monthly challenge, we are going through and evaluating these and putting these into this GitHub discussion. So I suppose I should drop all of these links into the chat right now. Oh, look, Dan beat me to that one. And don't beat me to the next one. There we go. And then all of these things are linked within that document. But you can see what's already been checked out and how folks have given it a check mark or not. But I think that a couple of things are important. Having a relevant name is good information to put out there. That's very, very basic. I think description helps your contributors to understand what the point of the project is and what technologies that your project is using. And that goes into relevant topics as well. So topics are their tags. So I will show you this. This is one that was submitted by Jessica Wilkins. It's the free CodeCamp developer quiz site. So we have the name is developer quiz site. It tells you the about. This is the description part. This is a quiz site filled with over 600 questions on programming. And then these tags here, this is what a topic is. So we know that if we are maybe a Ruby developer, this is not the project for us because she lets us, or they let us know that it's React, JavaScript, TypeScript, and they have the Hacktoberfest tag. So if you're participating in Hacktoberfest and you want your pull requests to count as one of the 4 that are required to complete the challenge, it has to have the Hacktoberfest tag. If you find a repository that does not have the Hacktoberfest tag, you can submit a pull request, but that's not going to count for one of your 4. And the reason that it has to have the tag is, I think this was instituted a week into Hacktoberfest last year. There was a lot of spam happening and there were a lot of maintainers that couldn't keep up with all of the interaction on the repositories. So this is to make it, excuse me, easier for the maintainers to prepare themselves and their repositories for contributions. And I know I, for example, have a number of open source projects that I have not been actively maintaining. And so for me, I already can't handle all of the notifications that I get from GitHub. So this is just to help, I think, both contributors and maintainers, because if maintainers can't handle the influx of comments and PRs and questions, then the contributors lose out there too. Oh, thanks, Meg. In 2020, wow, that feels like so long ago. Okay, so those are 3 of the things that we can look at. It also should have a README file. And as part of this, you give the project purpose, context, and installation instructions. And so all of those things are really important as a contributor to be able to get up and running and have an understanding, because if you don't have an understanding of what the project is for, you might try to do something that doesn't make sense for the project, or maybe it's a project that you feel like you can't contribute to it for some reason. So understanding, thank you, Shelley. Yes, I'm having a hard time distinguishing between 2021 and 2022. So let's take a look at this free CodeCamp project and what the README here looks like. Oh, I like the little image. That's super cute to get started. And it says, is the companion to learn to code RPG game, a visual novel game developed by Free CodeCamp to help you learn how to code. Nice. So it gives you all of this information. So we definitely understand what this project is and what they are, what the context and purpose of it is. So that's pretty cool. And then it tells you how to run it locally. And it even gives you some more directions on quick starting on how to fork a repository, which is super useful, and walks you through each of the steps that you need to get started. It also tells you how to contribute to the project, which is really useful. I think that there's probably more instructions in a contributing file, but we'll go ahead and take a look at that in a second. This is enough to get you started with, hey, they're open for contributions. This is how you get started. Bug reports, this is very specific there, and it gives you the license. So I think that's covered a couple of different things. We've got the README with the purpose and the installation instructions. Let's go ahead and take a look and see if they have a contributing file. They do have a contributing file, which is interesting because I don't think it's linked down here in how to contribute. Oh, wait, they have a whole site thing. Let's see. Okay, so there's an external Interesting. And they also have it up here. So does it just link there too? Yep, it does. All right, so it links over here to Free Code Camp's contribute page, which makes sense because when you have a lot of open source projects and you need to make a change to your contributing file and you're using the same one everywhere, then you only need to edit it in one place. And that's one of those things that I go back and forth on as a maintainer, whether or not you have your code of conduct right there in the repository or you link to it, because it does take folks, your contributors, one step away from having the contributing file or the code of conduct right there, but it does make it easier if you're maintaining a number of repositories that use the same thing. Meg says she likes it when there's one source of truth. That's interesting. I just made the decision on 5 projects to include the file in the repository rather than linking to it. Now I'm going to rethink that maybe after Hacktoberfest. It definitely makes it easier to update and make sure that it's standard everywhere around. So let's see. They mentioned their code of conduct a couple of times. That's one of the things on our list. So we've got that link to the code of conduct that may or may not open right now. It's interesting. So you can check that out. That's a pretty short code of conduct. Be nice. Okay, it's there. They told you to be nice. They have a lot of moderators too that work to make the Free Code Camp space a welcoming and supportive space. Okay, so it tells you all the different things you can do: create, update, fix bugs in the curriculum and their learning platform, help them translate. I was reading an open source article this morning that said a good place to get, actually, it was on the Hacktoberfest website. They have a section for low code and no code on their Hacktoberfest. Yeah, Meg, that would be, she says, too bad Markdown doesn't let you embed websites or other Markdown files. That would be the ultimate answer. And Nick says, this is a pretty decent COC, just run npx conduct. Cool. Thanks, Nick. So if you're one of our maintainers who had that flagged as something that needs to be updated before Hacktoberfest to have it virtual coffee officially recommended, go ahead and use that. That's a good start. Okay, so the low code, no code section of the Hacktoberfest website, one of the things that they recommended doing, especially if you're new to code, but you still want to participate, is to do a translation of something that needs to be translated. I wouldn't say to go into any repository and just start translating things, because that maybe is not the best idea to get started without talking to the maintainer, but it's definitely something that's worth bringing up if there isn't already an issue or a discussion for it. So if you're newer and this is something that you feel comfortable doing, that's a good place to do it. Let's see. There's also more information on contributing to the curriculum. So it looks like they have more information on how to do that there and a list of their translation. So they have a lot of really good information on how they are communicating everything, which is nice because then it helps to decrease the barrier to entry for anybody who is a contributor. And they also have a Git pod, or you can set up Free Code Camp locally on your machine. Cool. So that is pretty good. What else? A valid open source license. We did see the open source license, which is interesting because normally you see something like MIT, and down here they have their very own license, freecodecamp.org. What else do we need to look at? We got the code of conduct, issue and pull request templates. So the way that you can look for this is here in the .github file or folder. And then here's an issue template. Nice. They've got a lot of different ones. This is good to see. I think normally I see things like features and bugs, and then there's not a general one. I like the idea of having one for documentation and general. I think that we have all of those at Virtual Coffee too. And look, Jessica Wilkins, our member, is the person who has made the last commit 7 days ago. Yay, Jessica. So just if you want to take a look at this. Oh, update documentation. That's pretty short and sweet. What changes would you like to make to the documentation? Helps them sort things out. Features. We can maybe take a look at the virtual coffee ones too, because I think that we have pretty solid virtual coffee. Why is this not doing what I want it to do? Am I spelling this wrong? We don't want the podcast one, virtual dash COFFEE. Normally it just comes right up. We'll look at VCIO, which is our pinned one. And issue templates, bug report, content change. All right, so nice. We have a GIF there, which is super key. This is like a bonus. If you see a repository that has a template that has a GIF in there, then you know that it's probably a really great place to be. Also links to our discussion boards if there's something else that you have, and then kind of walks you through all of these different steps. And this is for a couple of different reasons. One, to help contributors learn how to write issues, and two, to help us to be able to sort what's going on here and make sure that all options have been explored. So if you have seen other good issue or PR templates, then go ahead and drop those in the chat now, and we'll collect those and post them in our discussion board for other folks to be able to find that. Reynald says, I had no idea you can make drop downs and text area inputs in Markdown. Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about how you created these templates? Because they're form templates, right?
Yeah. So this isn't Markdown anymore. It's a feature, and so it is only, this is just as a caveat, it's only for open source excuse me, projects. I keep forgetting and trying to add them to my work projects, and you can't. But since we're talking about open source stuff today, then that's fine. So there's two ways to make issue templates, and one of them is just Markdown, and the other one is called I don't know what they call it, issue forms, I think, or form templates, something like that. Yeah, and so do you want to so like, oh no, you have it. So yeah, there we go. So this is a YAML file, and they have docs. I'll try to dig up the docs for this. It sometimes can be kind of hard to find the right syntax, but basically what you do here is you can set a bunch of different things. You can set labels. You can also set things, and this is true in regular templates too, but you can set things like you can automatically assign somebody, things like that. And then after that, you have a bunch of different like types of things that you can do. So you see here, if we just walk through this a little bit, the first one is type Markdown. And so this just means there's no input at all. It's just content, right? That like shows up on the issue, but it doesn't show up in the submitted issue, right? It's just, you can explain things, you can do like lots of help content, stuff like that. And then we have checkboxes, drop downs, inputs. There's like a text area probably, or no, that's just a regular. I don't know, if you scroll down a little bit, Bekah, actually, I think we'll see them all. Yeah, text area. And I can't remember if there's any more. There probably might be one or two that I'm forgetting, but there's there's a bunch of different types, and you can kind of pre-fill them with things. You can add you can add a placeholder, you can add a description, help text, stuff like that. You can require things or not, which is nice. And so there's two nice spec. If you want to switch back to like an open, like a new issue, or just create a new issue. Leave this tab open because I'm gonna ask you to switch back to it, I think. Sorry. In a new tab, open up a new issue. This page you can define, which is also a really nice thing. You can do this with regular issue templates. And one quick note here is that last one is actually a link. So there's another file that we can use to set this, but you can add all sorts of issue templates, and then you can add links to other stuff. So if you want people to use discussion boards like we do for, you know, ideas and things like that, you can do that in your issue template settings. But which template file were we looking at? Do you remember? I just want to open the same one. Content change. Okay, cool. So here, title, I think, is just a default thing. And then you can see all of our, you know, this is what it looks like after it's done, right? And so users, you know, your contributors can fill this stuff out, and it turns into a nice little issue with the label, the form labels as headings, you know, and then whatever they type in as the body. This is a lot nicer in a lot of ways than the normal issue templates that are marked down, because what those do is dump a bunch of text into just the like the big description thing. And so all that stuff like stays. Usually people don't delete them, and it just stays in the issue as well, which can be a little hard to like read through, you know. So if we had all this, you could easily do all this in a markup, like a markdown file, except it wouldn't be drop downs and inputs and stuff. It would just be, this would all be like comments in like one big input like you normally see. So that's one of the nice things about these forms. This is it helps people write good issues, and it also helps people, you know, look at the issues after they're done. So yeah.
Yes, Meg.
Yeah, it does give the maintainer more control. And yeah, thanks for that link. There's a couple different this is a good link. There's a couple different places where you can find this, but I think this is the right one. This is like the best one that has like the most details, and it has the list of all the different types you can do, stuff like that, changes you can do. So it's cool. It's good stuff. Did I hit everything?
I just wanted to add real quick, like you were saying, Dan, it gives like for better issues, and also like it definitely, I think, bridges it makes it easier for people to get started, because it lets the maintainer ask for exactly what they want, especially using like those required marks, the asterisk marks, because before you could like create a sort of template out of Markdown, but people could just delete that stuff or not fill it in or whatever and still send in an issue, or just write one line and still send in that issue. And as a maintainer, you'd have to go through the cruft and everything. It will not submit unless the asterisks are filled out. And like it just helps everybody involved. And also, Bekah, if you could go back to that new issue page, just like to opening a new issue.
Do you want me to open one?
Yeah. There's still like at the very bottom, it says, don't see your issue here, open a blank issue. Like there's still, you can do a completely blank one. If whatever you want to do doesn't fit into one of those templates. But it's like little and hidden. So people usually just try to pick one of those.
Yeah.
You can also turn that off. So I'm sorry, just to jump in, that little link at the bottom, do a blank one. You have the option to turn that off, which is cool too. If you want to.
If you want to be evil.
I mean, some people, you want to have it like even more locked down. I probably wouldn't, but it is a possibility. So if you have a repository with like a large, like a large amount of contributors, and you want to kind of get some more of that control, you can turn it off.
Workaround that. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
I was just gonna say it's not. I know you're kind of joking, Meg, but it's not being evil. It's really like there's a huge burden on maintainers if you don't submit stuff or you put random stuff. Like, there's a reason why those templates exist. Like if you were like larger repos will even close stuff automatically if you haven't even filled out things. Like they'll have automation in place, and it's not because they're trying to be mean to you. It's really there is a high burden of going through issues. So that's why they really, the templates really aren't there to annoy you. Like, oh man, I got to put this into and this too. It's really to avoid back and forth and just help both sides out, really. So sorry, I interrupted you, Bekah.
I was going to give a work around that, but I feel like I probably shouldn't. So, I won't. But let's see, I think like, okay, so the last thing on the checklist is pull request templates. Now, I would say in terms of evaluating, oh yeah, Nick also gave some, I did open up a discussion for this. I can change the title if we want more than just templates. I was just trying to talk in open tabs and create this all at the same time. So if you have resources, go ahead and drop them into that GitHub discussion. But you can put an animated GIF into a PR, which Nick has given us an example for. Wait, let me try and grab this.
It's just it's a fun thing to do. It's not mandatory. When I worked at dev.2, there was an explicit section that was like, describe this PR in an animated GIF, GIF. I don't know. Anyways,
it's GIF.
Let's not.
Yeah,
let's not.
like the American peanut butter, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So anyway, that's cool.
I also just wanted to see the cat on Zoom, so thank you.
Actually, I think that OpenSUST has an entry for dropping a GIF that describes your PR too. Of this entire list. So if you're a maintainer or if you're a contributor and you're evaluating, I think that these top parts are really, really important. The issue and pull request templates in my mind are nice to haves. So it would be cool to have it, but if you're evaluating a repository and you don't see those, I don't think that's a reason to say, whoa, I'm not contributing to this project at all, right? It just helps you as a contributor and it helps the maintainers. Let's go back to, where did that go? Nope, that's not it. I'm looking for the free code camp one. Well, maybe I navigated. I lost it. Well, we also have PR templates, I think.
Yeah, just one. So pull request templates, you can still only have one on a repository, which is a bummer. But we
Yeah,
do.
so linked issue, description, methodology, code of conduct. And it's always really nice if you're creating a pull request to put closes and then the number of the issue, because when you do that, it will automatically close the issue once the pull request is merged in, and then the maintainer doesn't have to worry about that. I can't even read that comment, Yearn, because there are a lot of letters with dots over them and I'm not really sure how to pronounce them. So I'm sorry for all of you who are watching this after, because I can't do it. So I think that's about it for evaluating a repository right now. Some other things that I would say is look at their discussions, see what's happening there if they use discussions, or look at their issues, try and see how communication is. If you see there have been 110 issues and 9 million pull requests in the last 2 years and no one has responded to any of those, then that's probably a good indication that somebody is not working on that project right now. And even with the Hacktoberfest label, I think I still have repositories with the Hacktoberfest label up from last year. So I should probably double check that and take those down for the ones that I'm not participating in. But just because it says Hacktoberfest, I would still double check and see what's going on, what the communication looks like. Or maybe you look at an issue and there's some back and forth communication and you find out that the maintainer is really mean and you're not up for handling a really mean maintainer. It's just another way to evaluate whether or not it's a friendly place to be, especially if you're getting into open source for the first time and you want it to be a laid back space. So
Yeah, and just another note about the Hacktoberfest label, that's obviously not required for open source. It's only required for the like DigitalOcean Hacktoberfest reward. If you want to contribute to something that's not participating in the Hacktoberfest madness, we'll count it for our challenge. Just to be very clear about that. I just, I just want to like, because the Hacktoberfest, they did this label because it does put a lot of pressure on maintainers for the month, right? And it's fun, and like a lot of maintainers want to do it, but this is why maintainers opt in. But it I don't know. I mean, like it's just one of those things where it might be honestly easier to go find a thing. It's just you can't guarantee the maintainer to like try to merge it in October or whatever, or anything like that. And I wouldn't mention Hacktoberfest, otherwise, if they've chosen not to do it, they'll get probably testy. Anyway, that's my last bit about the little label thing. Meg, did you have a
positive as well?
thing?
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I think as long as your PR is approved before the end of October, even if it's not merged, it still counts.
Right. I guess my point is just like we at Virtual Coffee are like perfectly fine with people interacting with repositories that aren't like participating in the Hacktoberfest madness, but that you can't pressure them to try to do something by the end of October or whatever. That's it. That's my little bit.
Yeah.
Meg,
Gotcha.
go ahead.
Approve it now. I think I'll have to double check, but I think it was like a 2-week wait period. And it's like if you submitted your PR before the end of October, then it was fine, because I was like down to the wire last year, and I had some that were like approved after October, but they're like, oh, well, you got it in before the end, so it's fine. Also, I just wanted to mention, I'm not sure if you said this or not, the Hacktoberfest label, you can put it on the repo itself or on issues or PRs. So I wanted to be a maintainer last year, but didn't quite get it together. And whenever you put like that label on issues or the repo, it's just like you're going to get hammered by people wanting to contribute. And I knew I didn't have that bandwidth. So what I did was just told people like word of mouth, like if you contribute, I'll slap that label on your PR and it'll count. So that way it was like I controlled the influx of what was coming in, and like knew it, like if it was getting to be too much, I just would not tell people, and then wouldn't leave people hanging. But that's another thing, like if you want to try to be a maintainer but you feel like you might be spreading yourself too thin, that's kind of what I did, which is why my own contributions were down to the wire last year. I was like, oh right, I want to contribute too.
Yeah,
there's a section too on DigitalOcean for maintainers who are participating as well.
Yeah, and there's details about these rules and stuff on the Hacktoberfest site, the DigitalOcean one. Yeah, so there's just like Meg said, you can add a label to pull requests and they'll count even if the thing isn't on the repo. It's Hacktoberfest accepted. So that's actually a thing that you can do on a pull request. It doesn't have to even be approved or merged or anything. If a maintainer adds that label to a pull request, then that'll count for DigitalOcean's Hacktoberfest stuff. Kind of interesting. What's next?
Kirk.
Kirk. Hey everybody. I've just been enjoying the conversation. It's been pleasant. I feel like we've gone through a lot. we've covered a little bit about what virtual coffee is expecting and just like the general area of submitting issues. I was thinking maybe we could look at PRs, but it's very similar to sort of like the issue templates. You might see some folks. Okay, like Dan sent me a link. Dan sent me a link. But Dan posted a link.
I sent everybody a link. It's okay.
You sent me a link, Dan. That's funny. Okay, no one else is here. Yeah, pull merge request details, and I think this is probably the thing that folks we tend to see like the most difficulty with. People who may not be comfortable or haven't like gone through the flow of submitting a pull request before. And this is not even a Hacktoberfest specific thing. This is just like I wrote code for, I don't know, I want to say like 5 years without ever having to do a PR. It's just not something that's part of a lot of people's like workflows. So just to say for anyone here who's like, I'm still not comfortable with this, that's perfectly fine. I'm still not comfortable with it and I have to do it. And that's, that's just one of those aspects of software. So a lot of folks in VC are sort of going to be available and down this year to help folks with doing that first pull request. When we do the kickoff, we try and like have a first PR done and we're doing it all together, kind of all at the same time in a group. And that also really helps things, just so you're not kind of doing it alone, but you never have to do it alone. And, myself or anyone else would be happy to walk folks through that. And even if, some people have been using Git maybe on their own, but it's their first time like contributing to a project, you get nervous. You're like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right flow? So I think like it's worth, if you have any sort of difficulty or discomfort, just reach out, ask about it. We can totally help you with that. And that should be really cool. I'm going to try and share my screen. We're going to see how that goes. Becca's right. This is like way harder.
It's weird because it's green, so I feel like I should see it more clearly or quickly, but then my mind doesn't see it at all. It sees all the other tabs and not the green one.
Yeah, and if you're a host or a co-host, when you're recording, the buttons shift all over the place too. So it's not where it usually is either. That's another hard thing. Dynamic UI.
Yeah.
That's right.
So pull merge request details. So, and as we've been discussing this, I've realized like one of the difficulties of Hacktoberfest is that there are like 3 concurrent definitions of Hacktoberfest. What? A word has multiple meanings in the tech community? Crazy. There's like the things that DigitalOcean requires, the things that sort of like VC requires, and then like the general theme of Hacktoberfest. So just to kind of like make it super clear, if you go around and you see a open source project and you think there's an issue that you could solve and you submit it and they like accept it, it's like, that's great. If you choose to sort of like share that with a VC, that's also great. And if that repo is either tagged Hacktoberfest, the issue is tagged Hacktoberfest, or the maintainer tags your contribution Hacktoberfest, that also contributes to like DigitalOcean's thing. So like it could be all 3, it could be anyone. It's perfectly fine. Like the spirit is just helping stuff out. It's going to take like 6 months for that t-shirt to come through. So it really is, you should really be doing for like the joie de vivre of open source. T-shirt's going to take a while. But yeah, so I'd just like to cover some things here. Most of this is really sort of like less applicable, more for like the ne'er-do-wells who are going against the spirit of Hacktoberfest and just, I don't know. I don't even know why they spam. It feels like it's not worth the effort it takes to spam. And it feels like such bad energy because like it's like very obvious when someone's being spammy. So I'm like, I don't know if this is getting you what you wanted. But they have like a nice rubric here. If you're worried, like, oh, am I doing something wrong? You're probably not. And if you're really worried, you can always reach out to, again, the maintainer of the project or one of us and be like, hey, am I doing the right thing? We can tell you, like, yeah, you're probably doing the right thing. It's usually okay. The nice thing about anything Git related is that like mistakes in Git are pretty much fixable 99.9% of the time. So if I've made an error of this or I've typed this wrong, that's okay. And something that GitHub now has that maybe you didn't have before there's such a thing now as like a draft PR, so like I always encourage people like, oh, you want to tackle something, especially what I've seen before sometimes with Hacktoberfest is someone's like, hey, I want to work on this issue. Maintainer might be like, yeah, okay. Or they ask about it in the issue conversation. Someone else just like maybe went ahead and submitted a PR. And then they're like, oh, well, what do I do? This person already submitted a PR. I feel like, do I contribute now? Do I find something else? So I'm a big fan of once you grab an issue, or it's like, yeah, I'm going to take this issue, just quickly throw up a PR and you can just set it as draft. And it's like, everyone's like, oh yeah, this person's definitely working on this. You can continue to add to it and fix it whenever you want, but like it's there and like it's known, and you just sort of like, I'm working on this thing. And that can be really good. Draft PRs are also a great place to like talk through your methodology. So I'm a big fan of saying, hey, this is what this PR is going to cover. This is what my attempt is going to be. It's really transparent for the maintainers so they can sort of see what you're going to be doing and like maybe like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Or hey, before you jump in there, you might want to check this out. So there's a lot of good things about that. Okay, so let me see if I can. Oh wait, I haven't checked the chat at all.
I just also with the draft PRs, it's also a nice way to like, if you have, I mean, Kirk is just talking about questions and that's basically what I was going to say too. But if you are like kind of get stuck, you're like close, but you're stuck and it's not working, that is also a great place to push up a branch and make a draft PR and then ask a question to the maintainer. It'll be much easier for the maintainers to answer a question if they can see, what's going on. That way they can check it out on their own computer or whatever, and have a much easier time answering a question than if you just like pasting in pieces of code or whatever. So draft PRs are great. They're a great tool.
Yes. I want to do another share, but I realize I need to switch to a different tab because that requires a different login, and that is the world I live in. I have so many Google profiles. So let's go to this one. Let's see if we can go back to GitHub and then go to Virtual Coffee and then go to just a general site and just maybe talk about the workflow a little bit. I was very, very tempted to sort of like try to live do a full PR cycle, but I feel like that is where the technical issues are going to appear. So we'll just maybe like talk through it a little bit. Let's see if this one looks cool. Okay, so we're sort of back in like the general, it's called like the general GitHub environment. And I'm just gonna like quickly walk through the pattern I usually use and I am about to like do one of these projects. So let's say like you've found an issue from some issue on like an open source site. You're like, oh, I want to work on it. What do I do here? I use GitHub Desktop. Not everybody does. You don't have to, but I usually use that. So my first place is usually go to Open GitHub Desktop. That's going to take care of a lot of things for you. It's going to open up the interface on your machine. It's going to ask you like, hey, do you want to clone this site down to your local machine? You're going to choose a folder. It's going to ask, hey, you want to open a VS Code? Like it tries to sort of automate a lot of that process. If you're not doing that, then you're looking at one of these and you're going to basically navigate to the appropriate folder on your machine. You're going to like copy this command and you're going to basically pull down a local copy of that repo onto your local machine. And that's where you're going to be working from. Again, the biggest question we have, or one of the biggest questions we have is like, what is my Git flow for working this type of thing? And my pattern is always get the freshest or stable version of the project you're going to work on. You immediately make a feature branch for whatever it is you plan to be working on. Never, or as much as possible, try to avoid working in main, remote main, local main, trying to give the feature branch a meaningful name. You're going to push your changes up to sort of a remote feature branch with the same name. And then the maintainer, once they've approved what you're trying to do, is going to merge that back into theirs. There's always that sort of circular path of remote or like online main, your local main, your feature branch, in your remote feature branch, and you're always going through that. If you're using something like GitHub Desktop, it sort of assumes that default path and kind of automates that for you. There's other tools that can do this as well. If you're just going through the command line, that's fine. You just have to be a little careful and make sure you write the names correctly. But that's going to be your general path. Similar to what we said about the issues with pull requests, there may be a pull request template set up. The maintainers will usually indicate that if they don't have some sort of official template set up, they might have something in just their documentation. So always check out the README. I think it's always a good practice. Just go through the full README just to see if there's any points of interest there that might be relevant to you for contributing. Something I've seen people ask about before is, what do I do once I've submitted that PR? Do I let the maintainer know that I've submitted the PR? I would say this is something you really don't have to do. If they're a site if there are projects that is accepting contributions, they should be doing that on a good clip, but also people are people. Like if it's someone in Virtual Coffee, let's say me, for example, and working on my project, I don't mind a quick ping saying like, hey, submitted the PR, like, cool, thanks, and I'll check out. If it's somebody you don't know, you don't have that type of relationship or access to, I would say give them a few days. If not, it's fair on the PR or on the issue to add another comment saying, hey, submitted the PR here, check out this, and you can link to it. And that makes it really easy. Be aware. Again, maintainers are people with their own lives and like habits. And some people, they're on it every day. Some people, it might be once a week. If I understand the way DigitalOcean has set it up, if your issue was submitted in the month, I think you are still in the clear, even if like it doesn't necessarily get accepted in the month, as long as you submitted it like within the right time frame. So I would say don't sweat it too much. And also, I've had people accept PRs like 6 months after I posted them, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, hey man, I'm not paying you for this. So like it's okay. So I'd just say like, kind of keep that grain of salt. Everyone here will try as much as possible to be, like quick and like sort of responsive on the feedback, and we all have our own schedules that we've made. But once you're in the wider world of open source, there's really not that many rules. And I think part of Hacktoberfest is sort of like to try and introduce some consistency, to try and like have a general rubric that most people can agree upon, to provide something, especially for new people to hosting projects, so that like they sort of don't continue the mistakes of everybody else. But just the way it is, sometimes things fall off the wayside. I feel like everyone here I know who has an open source project has had a time where they were just like not really checking up on it for a while. And that happens too. But hopefully for Hacktoberfest should be okay. What's happening? Keep trying to check out chat. There you go. Nick's got the right idea. You burn some sage and you try your best. And if it works, then it works. But at least we can say, if you're doing anything VC centric, feedback should be sort of quick, and you always have access to us if you want to be like, hey, is this okay? Are we still, and we can give you like that. Yeah, we are. Just give us a little bit. We'll get to it. Is there anything that we haven't gone over yet that we still want to check out? I don't know if we spent too much time on some of the labels that we've made besides the like official Hacktoberfest labels, if you want to jump into it. Oh, Bekah's got to jump. Thank you so much, Bekah, for leading the first time of this. It's me and Dan now, so this is going to quickly devolve into chaos. But yeah, Dan, I wonder if you want to check out like some of the labels, and maybe it might be nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't use this repository if that's,
Yeah,
just because this isn't it's a private repository. But
let's do IO.
or you could just do, yeah.
Okay. We'll do that. And I think I also want to look at, there's some like finer points of GitHub. I realize like in the course of doing this, I feel like we have had a lot of exposure to GitHub's interface, more than probably most people. There's some really cool things in there that I just kind of want to talk about. They might not be used like in your open source journeys, but they're like stuff to be aware of. And I think it's like what we're talking about. I just like to nerd out about it. Okay, so we're back at virtualcoffee.io, which a lot of you might be contributing to soon. So a couple things I want to talk about. Oh, and also a quick thing for maintainers. We didn't really mention it. I haven't added it to the docs yet, but I feel like one of the best things you can do as a maintainer is just have somewhere in your README, preferably like very visible, that says open for contributions. You know, besides all the other stuff, just like the words, yeah, accepting contributions, open for contributions, just like that phrase takes a lot of pressure off my shoulders. Like, do they want my help? It's like, yeah, we want your help. Like, great, cool, because I have opinions about things. So yeah, so I want to talk a little about the tags. There's not a lot of consistency on tags. There's a couple templates floating around. We have a few things with our sites that it might be worth checking out besides like Hacktoberfest stuff. One thing that we like to use are these sort of statuses, because we found, again, to avoid like confusion about like, is this open? Can I take this? Can we work on this? So usually if someone picks up one of these, we try and change the tag as soon as possible to assigned. So other people know like, hey, even if you don't see a PR up for this, or there's not like a comment anywhere, this is something that's like going on. We have these other things. Some of these are for us like needs triage, like something's going on here, or this is on hold. There's something keeping this from like going through. Someone's working on it. Just these status updates are sort of like nice, quick ways. I don't know. They're like the emojis of issues. You know, you send the thumbs up or the thumbs down, but it keeps sort of everyone on the project knowing what's going on. I've encountered many an open source project where there's like a comment 2 years after the last comment, like, is someone still working on this? And it's like, oh, yeah, there's a tag for that. Also, in terms of the type of issue, tags are also nice. What's a bug? What's a feature? What's an enhancement? It can help the maintainer sort of sort out priorities. But also just keep track of like the type of things that are going on in the project. So you'll see like a mixture of those. A lot of maintainers will tag when something is for them and like explicitly like this is a maintainer issue only, like it's for them and their records, but feel like that's not for everyone or for like open people. So you can feel free to like not try and take that one or steer clear of it. So I feel like that's pretty good. But yeah, we have a lot of labels. Different people have different patterns. They're all trying to do the same thing. So it's just something, you know, while you're going through what's going on in this project, it can be good to check out and see what type of labels they have. I think they're really fun. Where do I want to go to next? Oh yeah, a couple of things up here, which I think are really cool. So different projects have different levels of integration. Once you choose an open source project, they'll usually indicate where they primarily communicate. A lot of OSS ones, they just talk straight up here in GitHub, and you will see these long sort of like issue conversations where someone proposes an issue or a PR and they discuss it right out here, which I think is great. Keeps everything out in the open. It's all in one place. Some people are different. That can be for historical reasons. They're like, hey, the Discord is where we talk about all this. Hey, we have a Slack where we talk about all this. Hey, we have a mailing list where we talk about all this. So, you know, sort of like pay attention to that. If you want to be part of like a wider discussion community for a particular project, like, well, I'm going to be here for a long time, it's kind of worth figuring out where are the people involved communicating. How do I get on that? If you don't want to engage with that, that's also perfectly fine. But if you do, it's something to look out for. This wiki, not every project uses it. Again, it's like how much, what's that word? Eating all the Kool-Aid? No. All the pieces of the Reese's?
Dog fooding, is that the one you're looking for?
It's definitely not that, but you're like eating all parts of the cow. Yeah, something, you know, like, I mean, like some people choose to consume like the entire GitHub UI. Some people only use the parts that serve them. I'm never saying dog fooding. I hate that phrase so much.
Wood shedding.
Oh God.
No, I'm not eating the GitHub kidney. I don't eat GitHub organs, so I'm opting out.
All that to say, some people also use the wiki as a like bigger, more explicit knowledge store. So this will not be where they keep like individual discussions or things like that, but it will be sort of like the project history, or maybe it's where they discuss the API. Like that's you know, it's part of, I guess, maybe the fun part, or sometimes some of the, like the more interesting quirky parts. It's like, where do people keep their stuff? We saw earlier someone had an entire separate website sort of like dedicated to certain parts of this. Some people keep everything here. Some people keep everything in the README file, right? It's just all in the README, and like, just check out the README, you know? So different projects will type different ways. It's just people's preferences. I have my preferences, but when I work on other groups projects, I just try and like accept their preferences and let them wash over me, even though they're wrong. They're not wrong. They're just wrong to me. It's fine. So yeah, also, if you see wiki, I would say check out the wiki. Issues, pull requests, discussions. Some people use discussions a lot. We haven't really talked about actions. Actions are not going to be super relevant to you as a contributor. I would say as a maintainer, they can be extremely useful. You can set up certain automation, certain features that I think are really powerful. Like on one of my projects, I have linting, code linting like you would get from Prettier as a GitHub action. So I don't have to worry about my contributors like writing code the way I like. Once they submit anything, it's going to go through the linter. So as you contributing to a project, you might contribute something, and then by the time it makes it up here, you're like, hey, this code doesn't look exactly the way I wrote it. They might have some automated processes. Don't take it personally. It's just, again, like they have a particular style and pattern that they want, and they've made it super easy so that you don't have to do the work and they don't have to like micromanage how you write your code. It's just like, oh, we're going to run this thing on it. We're not changing, like your thought and effort is still being contained. We're just like tweaking some stuff so it's consistent with the rest of the code base. And that's really good too. So all these things I would say look out for. If it's your first time kind of working in this environment, it's a great opportunity to learn. These are all tools and patterns that will be relevant to you in your careers. I think like it never hurts to learn. And like, this is a really nice space to learn about these things versus maybe getting your first experience with like a continuous integration platform or Git workflows like in a job that can just be a little bit more stressful. So I would say like, for sure, use this opportunity to play around with these spaces with people who are like, it's okay if you make a mistake, it's fine, like we can talk about it and we can work through it. All of us here have done some point done something wrong involving Git, GitHub, PRs, issues multiple times. Last week, I just had to like redo weeks of work because I did something wrong, you know, because -- force is not good. But that's okay. You know, I learned from it and I know better now, and that's good. So yeah, take this opportunity. As time goes by, GitHub adds more and more features. We try and not just like new stuff because it's new, but it's like, hey, if it serves us really well and we think it helps, we mix it in. Sometimes we don't. Bobby asked to use the projects tab. That is a great question. We do sometimes, and we have in the past, and we can sort of like, I think we can take a peek at this. We're not currently using it for this, but the projects tab can be useful, again, if you don't have like a separate Kanban process or agile process. Some people just use Trello,
Yeah.
you know, or something like that.
We use projects at work, like for client stuff. I use projects a ton. They're awesome, especially the new like version is really cool. And projects can be, I was trying to think of a good repository example of this, but one thing as a maintainer that you can do if you have the time for it or the energy for it is like, you can do like roadmap stuff here, which is really cool. You can add issues to projects and things like that, and, you know, plan out your whatever, you know, but it's a whole nother thing to maintain, you know, as well. So they're, I think, usually more geared towards internal stuff, but sometimes I have seen repository, you know, open source projects that use these for, you know, communicating stuff to contributors and things like that. It can be cool.
Yeah,
they're a neat
great
feature.
Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say like any sort of meaningfully sized project is using some type of tracking, but whether they're using GitHub projects specifically, there's a sort of a lot of reasons for that. One thing I've been told by a lot of people is like projects is very GitHub centric. If your team's tasks and stuff need to be shared by people who are necessarily not software developers or not doing technical work, then you might prefer something just a little more like field agnostic, which is where people go for more like the Trellos or even stuff like Notion, right? Just because it's something that like everyone might be more familiar with versus, hey, you got to make a GitHub account if you want to see what the team's looking at. So it's really just a matter of that. It's a matter of taste. But yeah, like Dan said, if you do choose, GitHub to me feels very much like sometimes like the Mac OS environment. In the like if you go all in on like that environment, like you get a bunch of like nice integrations just out the bat. So it's really easy in projects to tag issues, tag PRs, turn cards and it'll just like understand like, oh yeah, these are going to become new issues. These are going to become new PRs. Just got accepted, and it'll move them across the project for you as things go from open to closed, which is really neat, right? It's just like it's one level of stuff that you don't have to do. So if you're into it, go for it. But you know, don't like stress too much about it. And I still think projects is one of those features that people don't really use as much because everyone's already used to like the other like major players in the road mapping space out there. But not because it's bad, just because they have their own preferences, you know.
It's neat indeed. Thanks for explaining.
Yeah, it is. GitHub's come, I think, a long way, especially in the last few years. They've really sort of gone all in, I think, on like making, like improving the OSS dev experience. And like, by all means, GitHub is not the only place that does this type of thing. It's just the one that we have the most experience with. And as of right now, most of Virtual Coffee's projects are on the platform. And the platform's been doing some good work on like giving more tools for people who are maintaining projects, and also like providing guides for like folks who want to contribute. That doesn't mean everything's like super easy and simple now, but it means like they're aware like we need to make this like a better experience. And so far it's been getting better. Is there anything here worth mentioning? You can choose the level of interaction you want for a particular project. This might be more useful for something you're going to work on long term. You can set like, hey, how often do I want to be notified by these? I would highly suggest not clicking all. But it can be useful if you submit an issue and you just want to like know what's happening on that particular thing that you're working on. You're like, hey, on this issue that I'm working on, like if there's ever any update, let me know, you know, and that can be really helpful. It's also a way of like knowing as soon as someone responds versus like checking in or asking them if you're going to respond or stuff like that. We haven't really talked about forks. Forks are more relevant on projects, to be honest, that aren't being maintained, or if you are working on if what you're doing is like so comprehensive that you sort of need to be shuttered away from like the core project entirely. It's probably outside the scope of what we're talking about today. I mean, we can always chat about it, but it's for 99% of contributors, that's not really going to be relevant. And I have no idea if stars help anything. Stars are just a nice way of saying like, hey, I like this project, and like GitHub remembers the things you've started. So if you've seen something, it's like, hey, maybe you don't have the bandwidth to work on it, but you want to check it out later, or it's just like, hey, there's some cool stuff in here, I want to check out again. Definitely use the stars. Sponsors are new. You can sponsor projects now, or well, the person has to enable it. But from there, if you want to like put a financial contribution into a project that you really care about, and it's like, oh, this is helping me, this provides value, and I want to see them keep going, you can do that. Again, most open source is not for financial bank. There's like no financial benefit from it. People just do it because they can. So this can also be a nice way, and I'm kind of glad like GitHub put this in, because before the other way was people might do what's that thing? They're like other avenues, but they're all like outside the platform. You know, it's like, oh, you can go to this site or buy me a coffee or one of these things. So now it's just right here on the platform. You can do that. And that's pretty good. I feel like that is the majority of what I wanted to cover. Yerin said the new project is going to be approved a lot from someone who told me, oh, well, that's cool. So yeah, it seems like they're interested in it. Again, I feel like GitHub's plan is to sort of like become the one-stop shop for development. And, you know, they prioritize different things depending on like what people want the most and whatever their internal roadmap is. But they are getting more and more. They're consuming more and more. It used to just be, you can keep your code up here, and that was pretty much it. Now I feel like they're really trying to get to like, you can build your application on this, and you can kind of go from there. And that we haven't really talked about things like GitHub Copilot and stuff like that, but there's also that going on. There's a lot going on. And you should absolutely choose the level at which you want to engage with it. I feel like the last question we get a lot is people sort of saying, I don't have much time. Like, how much of myself do I need to invest into doing these things? Do I need to sort of like join this community? Do I need to join this Slack group? Like, what? I only have like a couple hours a day, and I would absolutely say like, don't stretch yourself thin for this. This works best if like everyone involved is sort of enjoying what they're doing. You know, find a project you like, and you know the goal is for that number is arbitrary, right? Like it's just like a nice number that most people can probably do. If you get 3 issues done this month and you're happy with those 3, then that's great. If you got one good one, you're like, oh, this was a great, I really wanted to do this, then that's also good too. And like it's, you make of it what you want. If you get 7, then yeah. So I would say like just try and enjoy it, try and like have a good experience, try and like have fun working with other developers. That's really the way to go, and everything else will probably work out. Yeah, I think that's all I got, because the longer I leave this window open, the more likely I am to show you all my passwords and my bank account information.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Kirk. Yeah, I think that's about it for today. I'm going to talk for a couple seconds, but if anybody has any final questions, feel free to leave them in the chat or raise your hand while I kind of wrap up. Our Hacktoberfest, Virtual Coffee's Hacktoberfest initiative is open for signups now. If you haven't signed up yet, please go ahead and do that. It's hacktoberfest.virtualcoffee.io. And if you have some experience as we're always looking for mentors, because we would very much like to have everybody that is contributing be paired up with a mentor if they want. And you don't have to be an open source master to be a mentor and to like meaningfully help people. This process is hard to get started in. I was a developer for a long time before I did any open source stuff, and it was nerve-wracking, even though like I knew the code really, really well, but it was still like there's so much like social stuff involved, and dealing with Git, doing pull requests the right way. So if you have experience just writing code and even just internally working with GitHub, you are the right person to be a mentor, and if you have some time. So please just like if you feel like you have some time, think about signing up as a mentor, and also as a contributor. Yeah, you can do both. Everybody can do all 3 if you want. And because there's contributors, mentors, and then maintainers. We're also just looking for people who are maintaining open source projects and want to, join in the fun and sort of share our thing. We will have a list of like links for repositories that we, either us, the maintainers, or our members have checked as like good repositories for Hacktoberfest contributions. We'll publish those lists like next week, or at least before the thing starts. We have, where do you sign up? So Skylar, that link that I put in, the hacktoberfest.virtualcoffee.io, you can sign up as a contributor, a mentor, and or a maintainer. How much time do we need to plan for mentoring? There is a drop down in that form that will allow you to say how much time you have, basically. So it's just like, how many hours do you think you can dedicate for the month? And it's like 1 to 3 hours total, or 4 to 9, or 10 plus, right? So if you only have a little bit of time, that's perfectly fine. That's probably enough to have, to help one person through, their first contribution at least. And we'll take it. It'll be great. Let's see, what else did we do? Any other questions I missed? Nope, I don't think we missed any other questions. So we're going to do a kickoff event on the 3rd of October, which is the first Monday in October. And that's the event where we will kind of walk through the issue that, so every year we've made an issue on the Virtual Coffee repository that everybody can contribute to. And so we are going to have another issue like that this year. And at that October 3rd thing, we will walk through together, like everybody kind of contributing their first pull request, and that pull request will count towards Hacktoberfest and all that stuff. So if you want to join, that'd be great. We will record it. And also like that issue will stay open the rest of the month. And so if you can't make the October 3rd thing, don't worry, you can still do the issue. But it'll be a fun time. We'll just all hang out and, and do some stuff. And what else? We'll have a bunch of events throughout the month. We're going to do some live streaming. We're going to do some more hanging out like this. We have the Hacktoberfest room in Slack. So if you're not in that yet, go ahead and join. It's just, it's for everybody. It's just Hacktoberfest, I think. And that's a room we can all kind of hang out and ask questions and do all that stuff. What else? Did I miss anything else? I don't know. I'm excited. This is my favorite. Like, I just love this time of year. So, it's a good time, and I'm glad you all are here. And yeah, if anybody else has any other questions, just hit us up in Slack or anything like that. And otherwise, Kirk, are you good? Are we good? Kirk's good. All right, cool. All right, well then, thank you everybody for joining us and hanging out. Thank you, Kirk, for your time there, and we will see everybody later.